On behalf of Audi and CNBC TV18, a warm welcome as the World Economic Forum's annual meeting discusses transformation, and in the context of the many financial and governance crises that the global economy has weathered these past few years and is weathering, it is clear that business needs to change the way it does business, and more so in India, where we face several issues of corruption over the past few years. So who better to talk to than young business leaders from India on the road ahead for Indian business and how it can change. Let me introduce my panel with me today. I have with me Michael Perschke, he's the head of Audi India, Ruben Abraham, Executive Director, Center for Emerging Market Solutions at ISP, and Sandeep Naik, Co-Head and Managing Director, Apax Partners India. To all three of you, a very, very warm welcome. Michael, I'd like to start with you first, because you've had two dual or sort of contrasting experiences of India. Your first trip here as an employee with a rival auto company, and then the one that you sort of the role that you play now. What do you think are some of the peculiarities of doing business in India, both the upsides as well as the downsides?
Well, first of all, if you look at India in 1997 to 2000, when I had my first experience, I think India was still on verge of opening up. It was still quite conservative in a way, very hierarchical. You had the patriarch who ran the company, and even if his son came back educated from Harvard or the UK and had a European lifestyle back in India, you still had to live still to the old rules and traditions. If you look today, the young boys have a bigger cars than their fathers. They live a more opulent lifestyle sometimes than their fathers.
Really, that is the key thing you notice.
Yeah, of course. I'm in luxury goods, and if you look, luxury goods 15 years ago was still a kind of hidden behind the curtain. The taxman was around the corner, so people were spending probably more money outside India than in India because it was not politically correct at that time, or it was very, very selective. Today, I think India has opened up on a much wider scale, and I think luxury goods, luxury travel, a luxury lifestyle today is something you have to have. Today we have global Indians like these gents next to me, their peers are global, and they want to live the same global lifestyle than anybody else anywhere in the world, and not be different just because you're in India.
All right, in Audi speak, that's code for buy Audi cars.
I think what he really meant to say is the sons are driving Audis while the dads were still driving Mercedeses.
Well, I think you articulated it well for him. He was trying not to go down that road. Ruben, you really think that the family business dominated business environment in the country has changed that dramatically? I mean, yes, maybe you see younger generations come to the business faster, maybe they're better educated now, they don't simply inherit the post,
Sure.
They have to at least attempt or pretend to work their way up to it.
Sure.
But has it really changed?
Well, not really, but at the same time, keep in mind the fact that, there's a heck of a lot of entrepreneurship today which didn't exist, say, 20 years ago. And I started my life off as an entrepreneur. When I started my life off as an entrepreneur, people used to think I was nuts. That is not the case any longer. There's tons and tons of people who look at entrepreneurship as a seriously viable option, who don't come from families, who don't come from these rich families, etc., etc. So that is actually and I think to a large extent you have to thank the IT industry for that. And if I had to pick, I would pick Infosys. The fact that, 4 guys with 10,000 rupees could create this behemoth $40 billion company has implications. People actually...
It's a sexy story.
It's a sexy story, and people have realized the fact that you can actually make money without this family background, and clean, most importantly. You don't have to be a crook any longer to do business.
Okay, clean is important because I want to get to clean in just a bit. But Sandeep, before that, what do you think are some of the things that define modern Indian business, even though it may not seem very modern from the outside?
I think what defines modern Indian business is that India is exceptionally different, and it is very different on many different levels. And the issue of painting India with the same brush as to what we see everywhere else would be a mistake. If you think about family-owned businesses, what's happening in India today, it was no different in Europe about 20, 30, 40 years ago. And India is at a life cycle as a country that we are transitioning through certain issues or certain stages of a life cycle of a company, or the kind of civil unrest that we are facing, or the corruption issues that we are facing, which has already happened in some of the other markets that we have seen.
Sure.
So I don't see that as an issue that we are facing. It's actually an opportunity in which we can find how do you really impact new business models. As Ruben mentioned, we now have 25-year-old entrepreneurs who are coming out and setting up businesses, be that on the IT services side, on the .com side, and these companies are going to be multi-billion-dollar companies. So as an investor, when we look at India as a marathon. It's not a sprint. There are going to be many, many opportunities that are going to come up. And if you get bogged down by some of the things that you see at a surface level, that would be a wrong way to look at India. You need to uncover, go to the next level, and really identify the opportunities, because there are tons of opportunities as long as you're in it for the long run.
And I think Sandeep makes a very interesting point. I mean, because if you look at the historical data, outside of the United States, there's not that many countries on the planet that aren't dominated by family-owned business.
In fact, I was going to draw the parallel with medium and small-sized businesses in Germany as well. I mean,
all the Asian companies, the Kairetsus,
yeah, sure,
all of them are basically family-dominated giants.
And I think it speaks of a history of entrepreneurship, of a different kind maybe. What you're seeing today is maybe the second phase of it, but all the family-run businesses are all eventually people who at one time started off with very little capital, but some ambition and a dream, right?
I think it's important, that is an important point, which is that India was actually a very entrepreneurial country.
Culture.
Historically. Yeah. I mean, so whether you go back 500 years and you look at the sea lanes being dominated by Gujarati traders and so on and so forth. So what has happened over the last, say, from 1947 or even later, actually, 1950, say, to 1990 to 2000 or so, is actually an aberration in the history of India. Okay. Because India went from being a very entrepreneurial country to being something else, and now it's sort of become...
Because of the state control.
Because of state control, exactly.
Yes.
And now it's sort of going back to what India used to be. I mean, keep in mind, these vast migrations that you've seen out of India was really people having no options.